I never imagined I would share this with you, but here I am, finding the courage to reveal the most secret, forbidden, and complicated night of my life. That day, the day everything changed, I thought it would simply be about not spending my 64th birthday alone. However, there was so much more behind Edward's desire not to leave me by myself. The pull between us, those forbidden feelings, and everything we had suppressed for years could never truly be ignored. That day was when all of it came to a head. Let me tell you everything from the beginning. Edward was Jonathan's stepson. Now, at 28, he is confident, determined, and someone who could captivate me at first glance. In the year Jonathan passed away, he used to visit often, sometimes staying with me for days. But 2 years ago, he disappeared without a word. During his absence, the moments we shared stayed locked in the deepest corners of my mind. I tried to forget about him, to push those memories away, but I couldn't. And then that day came. He appeared at my door. He said he needed to look for some documents in the garage, but I knew immediately that he hadn't come just for that. Edward's gaze was the same as before, the kind that stirred up all the emotions I had buried deep within myself, leaving me utterly unprepared. When he smiled at me, holding some papers in his hand, I realized there was more to this visit, and I was right. The gramophone he had placed in the garage, the one I had always wanted even when Jonathan was alive, was sitting there with my favorite record on it. The documents were just an excuse. This was all about me. The moment I saw that gramophone, my heart felt like it would burst out of my chest. Later, Edward left without saying much, but that evening, he came back with a cake in his hand. That familiar smile was still there, but now it held something deeper. "I didn't want you to spend your 64th birthday alone, Bella," he said, and I realized then that this was about so much more than a birthday celebration. Edward was about to give me a night I could have never imagined. That night, everything changed, and now I will tell you every detail. When I opened the door and saw Edward standing there, I was unprepared for what I saw. This wasn't just a casual visit. I could feel it instantly. He was holding a delicate cake and dressed in a sharp suit. The smile on his face was different, more meaningful, more intense. Edward, now 28, carried a maturity that blended with the energy of his youth, making him impossibly captivating. "Happy birthday, Bella," he said, his voice warm enough to fill the entire doorway. His words both surprised me and stirred something indescribable in my chest. He had remembered my birthday. For the first time, someone had come to celebrate with such care. "I didn't want you to turn 64 alone," he added, his enchanting smile growing. "Tonight should be special. If this story resonates with you, join my channel, subscribe, and turn on notifications to hear more. Trust me, this will be one of the most thrilling stories you have ever heard." I wanted to say something, but the words caught in my throat. Edward placed the cake on the coffee table and stepped closer to me. "But Bella," he said, his eyes scanning me gently, "tonight could be so much more special. Let's celebrate it properly, in a way you deserve. Go put on a nice dress and let's make this a night to remember." At first, I thought about refusing, but his gentle yet insistent gaze made it impossible. I nodded slightly and walked upstairs. As I climbed the stairs, a strange excitement coursed through me. When I opened my wardrobe, my eyes caught the black dress I hadn't worn in years. I ran my fingers over the fabric and walked over to the mirror. Before putting on the dress, I slipped off my t-shirt, standing bare before my reflection. My skin was still firm and youthful. I traced my waist with my hands, leaned slightly forward and studied my shoulders. "I am truly captivating," I murmured to myself. I was 64 years old, but it seemed like I had somehow defied the passage of time. Smiling to myself, I slid the dress on, feeling genuinely special in that moment. As I descended the stairs, a familiar melody floated from the living room, reaching my ears. It was my favorite song. My steps slowed, and my heart began to race. How did Edward know? I had never mentioned it to him. Confused but intrigued, I made my way toward the living room. Edward had set up the gramophone in the middle of the room and had carefully chosen the record to play. When he saw me, his eyes lit up. The admiration on his face spoke volumes even though he didn't say a word. "How did you know?" I asked, unable to hide my surprise. Edward smiled softly, his gaze unwavering. "I listened to you, Bella," he said. "You probably thought you were the one always listening to me, but in truth I was listening to you. Every detail you mentioned, every passion you shared, I remembered it all." His words filled me with warmth. It had been so long since I felt truly seen, truly heard. Edward stepped closer, extending his hand toward me. "Let tonight be all about you, Bella. I am here to make you feel special." As the melody filled the room, I couldn't deny the depth and determination I saw in his eyes. We sat down and started talking. But this wasn't an ordinary conversation. It was laced with all the feelings and emotions we had suppressed for so long. The pull between us grew stronger with every passing second. Edward's voice broke through the air, deep and full of emotion. "Do you know why I didn't come back before, Bella?" His question caught me off guard, and my eyes locked onto his emerald gaze, trying to decipher where this was going. He paused for a moment, as if carefully selecting his words. "I have always been drawn to you," he finally admitted, his voice soft yet powerful enough to fill the room. "I saw the desire, the passion, the excitement inside you. I always saw it, but what I felt scared me, Bella. I knew I couldn't be around you. My body wanted to run to you, but my mind kept telling me it was wrong." His words sent a wave of warmth through me, but also a swirl of confusion. My heart began pounding wildly, but I knew I had to keep myself composed. Taking a steady breath, I looked at him. "Edward, you shouldn't say this," I replied, though the tremor in my voice betrayed my emotions. "I know I shouldn't," he said, lowering his head slightly. But then he raised his eyes to meet mine again, and the intensity in his gaze rooted me in place. "But I can't hold it in anymore, Bella. For 2 years I haven't been able to get you out of my mind. Your eyes, your smile, everything about you has haunted me. Wherever I went, I saw you. My heart wouldn't let me forget." The honesty in his confession both startled and deeply excited me. My hands were clasped tightly in my lap, and I realized they were trembling. "Edward, this isn't right," I said, though I couldn't deny the magnetic pull I felt toward him, the connection between us. "It's not right." Edward leaned slightly closer, bending his knees where he sat, tilting toward me. His eyes were filled with a deep determination. "Right or wrong," he said, his voice low but resolute. "I can't deny what I feel, and neither can you, Bella. Your eyes tell me everything. You know this connection between us is real." For a moment I was silent because he was right. This pull between us had always been there. A bond one had tried to ignore for years. Feelings I didn't want to acknowledge but that had grown stronger, pulling me in more and more. Now, in his gaze and his words, it all echoed back at me. "Thank you for not leaving me alone that day," I finally said, my voice tight with emotion. "But Edward, this is dangerous. If we go further, neither of us will be able to turn back." Edward slowly reached out, placing his fingers over mine. His touch shattered every logical barrier I had built. "I don't want to turn back, Bella," he said. "I just want to live this moment with you, to show you how I feel, to tell you how special you are to me." Tears welled up in my eyes, but these feelings didn't break me. They freed something deep inside. His words were an admission of a passion he had kept locked away for too long. "When I look at you," he continued, his voice soft yet intense, "I don't just see beauty. I see strength, passion, and a joy for life. You think you are 64, but to me you have always been the youngest, most captivating woman, and those feelings, they will never change." His words broke through the last of my resistance. I took a deep breath and looked at him. "Edward," I said, my voice trembling but leaning toward him, "you see me in a way I haven't felt in years, and I can't deny that." The silence that followed was heavy. Yet it said everything. We just looked at each other, and in that quiet, every unspoken truth was revealed. The forbidden pull between us had become undeniable, irreversible. When Edward's lips finally met mine, every suppressed feeling erupted. The emotion I had came rushing to the surface. His kiss was filled with a passion that forced me to confront all the feelings I had hidden for years, but the intensity of it also scared me. The logical part of me was still fighting, telling me I shouldn't give in. Suddenly I pulled away, taking a deep breath. "Edward," I whispered, my voice trembling. I wasn't even sure what I wanted to say, lost in his gaze. I felt my control slipping. My heart pounded as I stepped back, wanting to put space between us. Without another word, I hurried toward my bedroom. When I shut the door behind me, I turned to face the mirror. My cheeks were flushed, my eyes brimming with excitement and confusion. My hands were still trembling slightly. "What am I doing?" I whispered to myself. But deep down there was a voice that couldn't be silenced, a voice driven by an overwhelming desire. I looked at the mirror more closely, studying the faint lines on my face, the hints of age, but then my eyes trailed down to my still firm, youthful body. "I still have it," I murmured, a small conflicted smile forming on my lips. Yet, somehow, that realization only made things more complicated. Just then, I heard the soft creak of the door. I turned around and saw Edward's determined gaze as he stepped inside. He didn't take his eyes off me as he closed the door behind him and moved closer. "Bella?" he said, his voice low but resolute. "I can't let you run away." I looked at him, but I couldn't say anything. Edward closed the distance between us, and once again his lips pressed against mine. This kiss deepened everything, pulling me further into a place I had no control over. My defenses, one by one, were crumbling. I couldn't hold myself back any longer. My hands instinctively reached for his shoulders. Edward wrapped his arms around my waist, pulling me even closer. His warmth enveloped my entire body and my breathing quickened. His kisses trailed from my lips to my neck and then down to my shoulders. My body, without hesitation, responded to his every touch. Yet the intensity of this forbidden desire completely consumed me. I stepped back slightly, not to run, but to catch my breath. Slowly, I reached for the straps of my dress, sliding them off my shoulders. The fabric silently fell to the floor, pulling at my feet. I glanced briefly at my reflection in the mirror and felt a surge of courage rise within me. "Edward," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I am surrendering to you." Those words lit something in his eyes, a fire that was impossible to ignore. Edward began unbuttoning his shirt, his fingers moving quickly, almost impatiently. When he shrugged it off, revealing his strong, athletic body, my heart raced even faster as I watched him take a step closer. Every part of me gravitated toward him. Edward placed his hands on my waist again, guiding me gently toward the bed. When I lay down, he joined me, his presence filling every space around me. His kisses started at my neck, moving down to my shoulders, further exploring every part of me. With every touch, he awakened emotions and passions that had been buried deep inside me for years. This moment was the beginning of a night I never could have imagined, and I knew without a doubt that nothing would ever be the same again. Everything was happening so fast that my heart felt like it might burst out of my chest. I looked at Edward, unable to hide the confusion and depth of my desire. "I never could have dreamed of this," I said, breathless. "But right now, more than anything, I want this. I am so excited and full of desire." Edward tilted his head slightly, a soft but determined smile spreading across his lips. "Bella," he said, his voice calm yet so deeply captivating it held me in place. "We both always wanted this, but every time we ran from it. Not tonight. Tonight, we are not running anywhere." At that moment, Edward's words shattered the last of my defences. I no longer cared where this night would take us. I was ready to lose myself in the moment. Something immense surged within me, so powerful it made me close my eyes and grab the sheet with one hand and the edge of the bedside table with the other. The intensity of it left me breathless, my eyes remaining shut for 2 or 3 minutes as I tried to focus only on what I was feeling. When I finally opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling, Edward was leaning over me. His hair was dishevelled, and his forehead glistened lightly with sweat. Just as I was thinking this is perfect, Edward reached out and pressed his hand over mine on the bed. Everything felt like a dream, so surreal yet so vivid. When I glanced toward the mirror and caught sight of both of us in that state, I couldn't hold back any longer. My legs tensed with such an overwhelming force, I felt as if I might faint. This was a desire and passion I had never experienced before, and I was utterly surprised by my own reactions. And then there was Edward, so breathtaking, and I could hardly believe he was real. His cheeks were flushed, and he was showering me with compliments. My voice trembled as I whispered, "Edward, you are incredible. Truly, I never want this night to end." I could see the excitement in his eyes growing even more. With my other hand, I reached out and placed it over his chest, feeling the rapid beat of his heart. "I have always wanted you," I admitted, barely believing the words myself. "I can't believe this is happening." I closed my eyes again, surrendering to the warmth spreading through me. At that exact moment, an intense heat filled my entire being. Edward, his breath uneven, collapsed beside me. Edward sat up with a determined expression on his face and reached for his phone, turning to me. He unlocked the screen with his fingers. "Bella, I want to show you something," he said. When he turned the phone toward me, my eyes widened instantly. It was a picture of a cottage by the lake, a small, cozy and peaceful place, exactly the kind of place I had always dreamed of. "I want to take you here," he said, his voice both serious and full of desire. "Far away from everyone else, in this house, just the two of us. Tomorrow morning, we will go see this place, and when we are there, I will ask you to wear something I have chosen for you. Because tonight, I saw the woman I have always dreamed of. That woman is you, Bella. It has always been you." His words sent a storm through me, and my heart began to race. I looked at him, completely at a loss for words. This wasn't just a one-night story. This was a doorway to something so much more. And while I didn't know what awaited us beyond that door, for the first time, I wasn't afraid, because I wasn't stepping through it alone. There is more to come, and this is only the beginning. If you have made it this far, I know this story has deeply touched you. There is so much more to share, and you won't want to miss a single detail. Don't forget to hit the follow button, turn on notifications, and leave a comment about this story. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Your support means the world to me. Lydia perched on the edge of her bed, gazing at the city lights through her window. The streets of New York pulsed with energy, but inside her apartment, silence wrapped around her like a heavy blanket. She had spent years learning how to live with the emptiness, how to smile through the cracks, how to pretend that the weight of her family's history didn't press down on her every single day. Her mother, Elizabeth, had remarried 5 years ago, and from the moment Darcy stepped into their lives, everything changed. He wasn't cruel, nor was he particularly affectionate, just an enigma. He carried himself with a quiet authority, never raising his voice, never letting emotions slip through his carefully controlled expressions. Lydia never called him Dad. She never even thought of him as family. He was simply there, a presence, a reminder that her mother had moved on from the past that still haunted Lydia. That night, as she traced patterns on the sheets absent-mindedly, a soft knock broke her thoughts. She glanced at the door, her pulse quickening. It was late, too late for casual conversations. "Come in," she said, keeping her voice even. The door opened slowly and Darcy stepped inside. He looked different, not in appearance, but in energy. The usual confidence in his stance seemed forced, his jaw tighter than usual. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice low. Lydia folded her arms, skepticism rising. "Now? Couldn't this wait until morning?" He hesitated. "No, it's important." She studied him, trying to read between the lines, but his expression was unreadable. With a sigh, she nodded toward the chair near her desk. "All right, sit." Darcy didn't sit. Instead, he leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes locked onto hers. "There's something I've been keeping from you, something your mother never told you." Lydia's stomach clenched. She had spent her whole life navigating half-truths and carefully curated family secrets. This felt like another storm waiting to break. "I'm listening," she said cautiously. Darcy exhaled sharply, raking a hand through his dark hair. "Before your mother, before any of this, there was someone else." Lydia's brows knitted together. "Someone else?" He nodded. "Someone I loved, someone I lost." He paused, searching her face for a reaction. "And that person was connected to you." Her breath hitched. The air between them felt suddenly heavier, as if the room itself was holding its breath. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Darcy's gaze softened. "Your father? Your biological father? He wasn't just some man your mother once loved. He was part of a story I never thought I'd have to face again." Lydia felt her hands clench into fists. "Are you saying you knew my father?" A slow, solemn nod. "Not just knew him. We were—" He hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. "We were more than friends. We were like brothers." Lydia's mind reeled, trying to grasp the implications of his words. Her father, the man who had always been a ghost in her life, was somehow tied to Darcy, tangled up in Darcy's past. "What happened?" she demanded, her voice sharper now. Darcy sighed, his shoulders sagging. "I lost him. And when I lost him, I lost a part of myself." Lydia swallowed the lump in her throat. "And my mother? Where does she fit into all this?" His lips pressed together in a grim line. "She was the bridge between us. After your father, after he was gone, she and I found solace in each other. It wasn't love, not the way people imagine it. It was survival." Lydia's pulse roared in her ears. Everything she thought she knew about her family had just been turned inside out. The man standing before her, the stepfather she had kept at arm's length for years, wasn't just some stranger who entered her life by chance. He was part of a deeper, more complicated past, one that had shaped her without her even realizing it. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked, her voice barely steady. Darcy looked at her, and for the first time, she saw vulnerability in his eyes. "Because you deserve the truth. And because I don't want to be another ghost in your life." Lydia's breath caught. She had spent years hating the idea of him, resenting his presence in her mother's life, in her life. But now she wasn't sure what she felt anymore. Lydia sat frozen, Darcy's words echoing in her head. She had spent years constructing walls between them, but now those walls were cracking. He wasn't just her stepfather. He was part of a past she had never been given the full truth about. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to speak. "You said my father and you were like brothers. What does that even mean?" Darcy exhaled, his expression shadowed with something between regret and nostalgia. "We grew up together. Same neighborhood, same ambitions. He was the kind of person who made life feel larger than it was. We had plans, big dreams of leaving behind everything that tied us down. But life doesn't always go the way you plan." Lydia's hands clenched. "And my mother?" She never mentioned any of this. "She wouldn't," Darcy said. "Your father wasn't just the love of her life, he was her weakness. Loving him meant losing control, and your mother, she's never been good at losing control." Lydia tried to process the weight of his words, but something still didn't fit. "Why did she marry you?" Darcy looked at her, something unreadable in his expression. "Because grief has a way of making people reach for whatever feels solid. I wasn't her great love, Lydia. I was just the one who was still standing." A hollow settled in her chest. "So, you were a consolation prize?" His jaw tightened. "If that's how you want to see it." Lydia shook her head. "And you? What were you reaching for?" Darcy hesitated. I thought I was reaching for stability. I thought I could give her something real, something safe. But in the end, some ghosts never let go. Lydia's breath was uneven. Do you regret it? He held her gaze. I regret a lot of things, but not telling you the truth was starting to feel like the biggest one. She felt the weight of his words pressed against her. For years she had believed her life was built on solid ground. Now she wasn't sure if anything had ever been real. I don't know what to do with this, she admitted, barely recognizing the sound of her own voice. You don't have to do anything, Darcy said softly. Just know that the story you were told isn't the whole truth. He stopped himself, exhaling sharply. I just needed you to know. Lydia searched his face for something, anything that would make this easier to accept, but all she saw was a man carrying the weight of too many years, too many choices. For the first time, she didn't know if she saw him as an outsider anymore. Lydia avoided Darcy for days, her mind tangled in thoughts she couldn't escape. The way he looked at her that night, the weight of his words, it all left her feeling unsteady. She wasn't sure what unsettled her more, the truth about her father, or the way Darcy's presence had suddenly shifted in her life. He was no longer just her mother's husband. He was something else entirely, something she couldn't define. When they finally crossed paths again, it was unplanned. She had stepped into the kitchen for a glass of water, only to find him there, leaning against the counter, staring at nothing. He turned when he heard her, and for a moment neither of them spoke. I thought you left, she said finally. I thought about it, he admitted, but that didn't feel right. Lydia hesitated, then sighed. I don't know how to look at you anymore. Darcy studied her carefully. I never wanted to change how you saw me. She shook her head. But you did. A silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken things. Lydia wanted to be angry. She wanted to resent him for breaking apart the version of her life she had clung to for so long. But anger felt false. The truth was, she didn't know what she felt anymore. She sat down at the small dining table, running her fingers along the edge. Tell me more about him. Darcy pulled out the chair across from her. Your father? She nodded. A faint smile touched his lips, something almost wistful. He had this way of making everything feel possible. He believed in things, even when there was no reason to. He used to say that life wasn't about waiting for things to happen. You had to make them happen. Lydia felt a lump rise in her throat. Sounds like someone I would have liked to know. Darcy's expression darkened. He would have been proud of you. Her chest tightened. You really think so? I know so, he said without hesitation. A strange warmth spread through her, tangled with grief for a man she had never known. But beneath that grief was something else, something she didn't want to name. Over the next few weeks, things between them shifted in ways she couldn't explain. The tension that had once been rooted in resentment was gone, replaced by something softer, something unfamiliar. They talked more, about books, about life, about the things they never thought they'd share with each other. It was as if the walls between them had finally collapsed, and for the first time, Lydia saw him not as her stepfather, but as a person. And that terrified her. One evening, they were caught in the rain on their way back from the grocery store. Lydia laughed as water soaked through her clothes, shaking her head at the absurdity of it all. Darcy just watched her, something unreadable in his expression. You're different when you laugh, he said. She glanced at him. What do you mean? You let your guard down, he said simply. It suits you. Something in the way he said it made her pulse quicken. She looked away, pretending she hadn't noticed the way his gaze lingered. But she had, and she knew deep down that things between them would never be the same. Lydia barely recognized the life she was living. Every interaction with Darcy carried an unspoken weight. Every glance held something she wasn't sure she was ready to acknowledge. She told herself it was just the shift in perspective, the knowledge of their intertwined past that made things feel different. But deep down, she knew better. It wasn't just about the past, it was about now. She had spent years avoiding him, dismissing him as nothing more than her mother's husband. But now every moment alone with him felt charged. Every conversation dipped into something deeper than either of them had intended. She hated how natural it felt, how easy it was to be around him now, and she hated that she didn't want it to stop. One night, as she was reading in the living room, Darcy walked in and hesitated before sitting across from her. He had been doing that a lot lately, hovering near her, waiting for an invitation she never gave but never denied. "You look tired," he said. She smirked. "That's just my face." A soft chuckle escaped him, and for a moment it was easy. But then he grew quiet, his gaze lingering. "Lydia!" The way he said her name sent a shiver through her. She closed her book, forcing herself to meet his eyes. "What?" "I don't want things to be strange between us," he said, "but I don't know how to stop them from being." She exhaled slowly, pressing her fingers against her temple. "I don't either." A silence stretched between them, thick with everything left unsaid. Then, before she could think, before she could stop herself, she asked, "Do you love my mother?" Darcy's expression flickered with something unreadable. He didn't look away. "I care about her." "That's not what I asked." His jaw tightened. "No, not the way she deserves." Lydia felt something shift inside her, something she had been trying to ignore for weeks. "Then why are you still here?" He ran a hand over his face, exhaling sharply. "Because leaving would feel like another lie." Her heart pounded. "And staying?" He leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. "Staying means facing what I shouldn't feel." The air between them was heavy, charged with something that scared her as much as it thrilled her. She stood abruptly, needing space, needing to breathe. But Darcy followed, stepping in front of her before she could walk away. "I never wanted this," he said quietly. "I never expected this." Lydia swallowed hard. "Then what is this?" He hesitated, then reached out, fingers grazing her wrist. "Something I can't change." She closed her eyes for a second, willing herself to think clearly. But clarity never came, only the overwhelming certainty that she was standing at the edge of something she could never take back. She pulled away. "I need to go." Darcy didn't stop her. He just nodded, a silent understanding passing between them. Lydia didn't know where she was going, only that she needed to move, to escape the inevitable. But deep down, she knew the truth. There was no running from this. And for the first time, she wasn't sure she wanted to.